Today I'm going to outline 6 different reasons you might not want to pursue a career in photography. And while I was putting together this list, I even realized that there was a common theme throughout each reason that I didn't even realize at the start.
Oh man, here he goes again, just complaining about photography for another 10 minutes.
Well, maybe, but that said, I would still choose this job over any other. I did choose this job over any other. And I wanted to work on a pros video for why you would want to be a photographer, but I think it's so personal to each and every one of us that if you can make it through this list of cons, you're probably the kind of person that'll do all right in this business. Let's get into it. The first thing you gotta make your norm, your feeling of well-being, is unpredictability. This might be why you wanna get into this in the first place, but it's not just about shooting something different every day. It's unpredictable to the jobs you get, sure, but also to the income you make. The closest thing to stability you might come to expect is a couple whale clients that basically fund your time off so you can focus on other ventures that might bring in more business. It's all an educated guessing game, so to speak. Sure, we look at the market, we look at trends, we look at ways to expand or break free from them, but at the end of the day, I still have to convince my clients, the businesses, the agencies that I'm worth their budget. That's every single day. It's like a well-established actor that has to audition for a new role every time, or imagine having to pass your driver's ed class every time you clock in for your pizza delivery shift. This really hammers in the point that you have to control your spending and reduce your overhead. Good months are great, but you can't look at those outliers like the norm. It's not until we look at year-over-year differences that we should make any budget decisions. At least for me. Don't buy it unless you can afford it. And don't buy it at all if you can find a workaround. If you value your commodities and materialism over time and freedom, this might not be the right path for you. I'm not saying you can't reach the heights of your career with a Porsche for every day of the week, but it's kind of like making it in the NHL, or insert any other professional athlete. There's millions of people with the same goal and only a few hundred spots for the taking. Working 24/7 can sometimes feel like the only answer. If you're not doing it, someone else might be, and that means they get ahead while you're sleeping. Except that it isn't. It's more than most likely in your head, and I definitely vouch for this constant fear of not being productive enough, but it's not until recently that I really put thoughts into practice about taking time off to maximize my time on. Not having set hours in a work week either means you can schedule yourself to play video games all day, or be working on 3 different treatments at once, but no matter what, there's always a little voice in your head telling you you're not being productive enough. Maybe it's just me, but I doubt it. I alluded to how competitive this field is because there really is only so many jobs to go around. But if you thrive in this nature, you can really get ahead. Most photographers are artists, not businessmen. But you can use that to your advantage. It's funny that the biggest photographers in your area are always actually the best business owners in the photography field because clients, for the most part, can't really tell the difference between good and great. It's up to you as the photographer to convince them and market yourself in a way that sells your service. It's not just about having better photos than your competition because clients and even agencies don't really book based off of a linear scale. These are people booking you as a person, you as a business, and they're leveraging their entire reputation against your creative input. So work smarter, not just harder. They say patience is a virtue. Man, they says a lot of things. But nothing I've done has tested my patience quite like running a business. Whether you're anti-establishment or not, being a full-time photographer means being a business owner. And what that really means is being the only one responsible for your taxes, your health insurance, I don't know what else do they do in departments. HR, there's an HR department. Make sure your marketing is down and your social media presence is up. Keep shooting new spec shoots and treatments and be your own prop stylist and food stylist. Be the studio janitor and don't forget to back up your files. There's always something else to do because we're really running a 10-man band. Sure, at some point you might reach a level where you can start to outsource a little bit, but this ties back to keeping your overheads low so you can continue staying in business. Hiring contracted help is simple, but taking on an employee to handle your paperwork is a whole different ballgame. Sure, I'd love it if someone could do all my negotiations for me and literally free up 30% of my week, which is just spent answering and sending emails, but I'm just not there yet. I've read that when you own your own business, you want to understand your value in time, your hourly wage, and anything that you can delegate for less than that, you should just use to free up your space. But when you're also a freelancer, it's in the job description that there will be peak times and long rest times. Sometimes the time off from shooting is better spent doing your own marketing and advertising than getting an agent. I know that back to the unpredictability of this job, there's peak business times and equally slow periods. Oh, and hint, hint, it's coming up. After the holidays, the first few months of the year are always, well, across many industries, not just photography, but they're always very slow period for work coming in. Brands and agencies are still working on their yearly budgets, and you should use that time to build out your own marketing for that year. If you want the same job Monday to Friday so you can enjoy your weekends and stat holidays and take off for Chris's wedding in the Bahamas, this might not be the job for you. I know we work for ourselves, but this is still a client-based business, and I'll dive more into that in a sec, but we still work for others and around their budgets. And before even getting into your first client, when you're starting out in photography, there's no such thing as an even playing field. Budgets may keep some photographers out of reach for a job that you're trying to land, but you're still competing with people that have 5, 10, maybe even 40 years of experience on you. That's experience on set, experience handling clients. It's tough. I will continue trying to include skateboarding references in these videos, so much like skating, there's a very steep learning curve. The very first few years is just figuring out how to balance. But with every year, every piece of knowledge that you learn, it just gets easier and it gets funner and you unlock more and more possibilities. Maybe not exponentially, but kind of. Taking on photography means you come out after 2 years of shooting in manual mode and thinking you've learned everything, but all you're doing is taking extra steps to what your phone does automatically. But once you're doing it for years with hundreds of different clients and thousands of different scenarios, then you can start to really confidently approach a situation knowing exactly what results you're gonna get. It goes from a game of, ooh, I wonder what I'll get today, to I have this idea in my head and I'm gonna go and make it to life. Maybe a little bit easier with my food stuff, but even if you're shooting portraits, there comes a moment where composition and lighting and exposure, they're not even in your head anymore. It's second nature. All you focus on is getting the interaction out of the client that you originally envisioned. Or say you have a specific mood in the portraits that you display in your portfolio, it's grabbing that feeling and that emotion, not whatever high-speed sync sunset lighting you pulled out. If you think owning your own business means not working for someone, just know that no matter the niche you're in, photography is always a client-based business. From Bridezilla's moms to the slew of characters from last week's video, or even with the best, most ideal clients, we're still at the mercy of their mood, the day that they had, their commute, their neuroses, how they slept that night. I set out to never work for anyone, but anyone is who's paying my bills and my gear. I need that anyone. There's a constant need for new gear and new tech and software that you just are assumed to have and assumed to have subscriptions for, and probably the ability to shoot 4K slow-mo too, why not? I've learned that from all of you that it's not a matter of if your gear is gonna fail, but it's when. I feel like it's kind of liberating to think of it that way. Really, I mean, it just means that if something breaks, it's an opportunity for something new. But working a client-based business means keeping up with appearances. So maybe you can use that to justify your lust for new gear. And maybe the most important aspect of shooting, if you want to make a career out of it, is showcasing your work. Being vulnerable enough to make art and let others judge it. You gotta be able to check your ego, because once it's out there, it's no longer yours, especially if the works are commissioned. Putting yourself out there is part of the job, and so does the judgment that comes with it. But despite the very few comments and maybe weird looks you might get, there's definitely an inherent God complex that comes with this. Everything falls on your shoulders. You have the last say, shy of the publishers. You're constantly forced into a situation where everything relies on you and the client expects you to have all the answers. It's really fulfilling when you get it right, but it's also not the stress-free option I originally thought when I was gonna be a full-time hobbyist. When there's money on the line and the success of an advertising campaign falls on your decisions, you have to be able to keep your head moderately inflated at most. At the end of the day, all we do is take photos. We can romanticize it all we want, but it's really not that important. If you find yourself complaining as a full-time photographer, like me, your list of things to complain about must be pretty small. This job and making this list of so-called cons really made me realize that there's plenty of other garbage things that I wouldn't put up with in other jobs, and that this is just my lesser evil. It's a hobby. Okay, with some quirks, but none worse than the cubicle a commute away. Being a photographer has opened up entire worlds to me that I never even dreamed possible. And I can only imagine what the next 30 years of my career are gonna be like. If you're still on the fence about launching into photography full-time, check out the video right over here if you haven't already on the essential habits of the best photographers, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.